Good morning. It's Monday, July 13th, and this is the SSS for today. I love stories. I love stories. I love to read books that are interesting and different, and sometimes I like to read fantasies, and sometimes I like to read mysteries, and sometimes I just want to read a good story. I love the story that Agatha Christie wrote. It was one of her stories in which the narrator ended up being the murderer. Nobody expected that. I'd love to read the Chronicles of Narnia and to read about the Pevensey children meeting and getting to know Aslan, the great lion who gave his life as a ransom for many, just like Jesus. The favorite story that I have is Lord of the Rings. It is my all-time favorite, and I usually read those books. Well, I should say I used to read those books about once a year. I don't so much now because the movies came out and I end up watching the movies instead. But I'm ready to read those books again. I love the story. I love the story of these 9 people that come together to do something amazing. I love the story of betrayal and fear and mercy and love and adventure. I love the story of the good overcoming the evil in the world through no great ability, just perseverance and love. We are reading right now in our Bible reading, our 100 days of Bible reading. We are reading stories, the best stories. I love these stories. We're just finishing today. Joshua 24 is the last thing that we will read in Joshua. It is when Joshua gathered the people together and said, "Look, this is what God did for you. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to serve him or are you not?" And he gives them an ultimatum. And they say, "Yes, we are going to serve the Lord. Just like you, Joshua, we're going to serve the Lord." Well, we find out later that we begin to read the book of Judges, and it's got these great stories. And in those stories, we find out that Israel, like all of us, had some trouble worshiping God. Sometimes they did better than they did at other times. And so judges were appointed to help them. And there's these great stories about judges, about Deborah and Samson. And Samson is a weirdo. Let's face it, he is strange. And the story of Samson, what does it help us understand? Maybe that God isn't limited to our abilities. Maybe that God isn't limited to our wisdom, but that God can do things in spite of us sometimes. And then we move on to the book of Ruth. I love the book of Ruth. It's a great story. It's a great story, and there's so much in it. There is a lovely, lovely, lovely story about a woman who remains faithful to her mother-in-law and goes home with her to Israel. And many things happen because of that faithfulness. It's a wonderful story about 2 women that help one another and become friends and work together for the good of each other. And it's also a story of romance. It's a wonderful story. There are so many wonderful stories in the Bible. You can read the Bible in a number of ways. You can read the Bible verse by verse. You can take each verse and meditate on that verse and see what God can do for you. You can read it through Lectio Divina, in which you read a passage and find a word or phrase in that is meaningful to you, and you meditate on that. You can read it next and have a commentary next to you that tells you what everything means. And sometimes that is a really great way to read the story. But you can also just read the story. Read the story and fall in love with the Bible. Fall in love with these Hebrew scriptures that are so ancient, some of the most ancient texts in the world. And we have the opportunity and the privilege of having them as part of our own texts as people of God. So enjoy these stories. Ask God to show you what it is God wants you to see. And it may just be that God wants to show you the faithfulness of God in the midst of just about any kind of thing that could possibly happen to people. Have a great day.